Former federal prosecutor and constitutional law attorney Katie Cherkasky to talk about all things Trump trials. Katie, thank you so much for being with us. Let's start where Brooke left off with the Supreme Court case on presidential immunity. What is the former president's argument when it comes to immunity?
Well, this case is not only the most significant for Trump's trials, but really for the future of the American presidency. So Donald Trump has essentially two arguments. The first is that a president is completely immune from any criminal prosecution for any acts that he undertook while in office, and the only way that he may be able to be prosecuted is if he were impeached and convicted by the Senate as a precursor. The alternative and kind of a middle ground win would be that the court finds that there's some sort of immunity in the outer perimeter of a president's official duties, and that's really based upon a civil case that the court heard many decades ago, Nixon versus Fitzgerald, which essentially said that there was some sort of test, a factual test, about where you could find the inner and outer perimeter. So if that were the case, the case would then get sent back down to the lower courts for that determination.
Okay, so how would the Supreme Court's decision on immunity impact all the other cases that are going on right now?
Well, if the court holds that a president is immune from criminal prosecution for any acts committed while in office,
immunity.
I think it could apply to all of the cases, including the state prosecution in Georgia, because it essentially would be a sweeping prohibition against any sort of criminal culpability for a president.
What are the chances that happens?
I think that is the long shot. I think the more likely outcome is that there is the fact-finding outer perimeter test that they use in a civil case that can be then applied to a criminal prosecution as well, or alternatively that they do require impeachment first before there's any sort of criminal prosecution that's permitted.
Okay, so the official question in front of the Supreme Court, it's wordy, and it's wordy for a reason. It's whether, and if so, to what extent does a former president enjoy presidential immunity for criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office. So to what extent, if they sort of rule for partial immunity for a president, how will that affect the January 6th case? Is that a win for the former president? Does it go away, or does Jack Smith still get to prosecute him for January 6th?
It's interesting. Jack Smith says that if there's some sort of partial idea of immunity, that the case can then proceed. But I really disagree with that, because I think that there needs to be first a determination factually about whether the conduct charged in the indictment for January 6th actually falls in the outer perimeter or whatever kind of test the court sets before you can proceed with prosecution. But ultimately, I mean, the question of immunity for a president is so significant because they make so many decisions. How can you second guess them when they get out of office and then decide to criminalize retrospectively? So that's really what the court has to grapple with.
Okay, so lastly on this hush money trial, day 7 today, they took that Wednesday recess yesterday. On Tuesday, prosecutors revealed another crime that they say Trump committed, conspiracy to promote or prevent election. What does that mean, and where is this one going?
Well, this is a very interesting finding that we found out about. So essentially, Trump's charged with a felony, which is that he falsified business records in the state of New York for the purpose of concealing another crime. Prosecutors just revealed that this alleged other crime is some sort of New York election law, which is itself an expired misdemeanor. So you're taking two misdemeanors to say that they're felonious conduct, but really there's no specificity about what conduct he undertook to essentially wrongfully promote an election. So they have to show both that he falsified the business records with criminal intent and that he did so to promote an election in some unlawful way through a conspiracy. So it's becoming very convoluted. It always was, essentially, for the prosecution. But that's the newest theory that we learned about.
You're teaching us about hush money. You taught us about civil fraud, and also how it's not a good idea to date the prosecutor that you hired. And now we're learning about presidential immunity through you as well, Katie. You are one smart woman. Thank you for keeping track of it all. We appreciate you, as always, for coming in early.
Thank you.